Sean, here's a question that I think has become way more relevant than maybe we wanted it to be for people's bankrolls, but it's here to stay. So I have to ask you, what's your approach to parlays? And do you think there are like smart, expert kind of ways to bet a parlay? Because I know we are a little bit anti-parlay here, just from a numbers perspective. So, what is your approach? What do you think the smartest way to go about parlays are? And does anything change with that same game parlays just versus parlays at large for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I personally focus on straight bets. I definitely don't do as many parlays as your average bettor. But if you treat them like what they are, for entertainment purposes, they're a ton of fun. So I'm not some stiff. I do bet parlays for fun. I mean, me and you bet on skee ball at Blind Donkey. Like we have part DGen DNA. So there's part of that when it comes to parlays too. But I think there are sharp ways to do them. I'm projecting every game, every team, every player. So I like finding angles for like a matchup if everything lines up, especially for an SGP, same game parlay. So the first thing is you typically want to, parlay things that are correlated. So if you take Patrick Mahomes to go over his passing yards prop, Travis Kelce's over receiving yards makes a ton of sense because they're very correlated. The books know that though, so they're going to, reduce the payout for things like that. So it's not as simple as just taking things that are correlated, right? So one of the things that I found, like the sharp way to do parlays, are find things that, the book is treating as anti-correlated, reverse correlation things, but they actually correlate more than the book is leading on. And one of there's many examples of this, but one personal one that I like to do is say someone like Calvin Ridley. I will take, say, the under on his receptions, but the over on his receiving yards. There's some reverse correlation there. The books are going to kind of juice out the payout because, you're threading the needle there. But a player like him, he's going to get a ton of downfield, low, probability targets. But when he does catch them, he tends to get a ton of yards. So it actually sets up well for him specifically. So those are kind of like thread the needle type parlays where you're going to get a bigger payout because the book is saying this isn't that correlated. But according to my projections, my sims, all my crazy, math nerd stuff, it is correlated in a sense. So I found doing things like that, you kind of get more value as opposed to just finding things that are very highly correlated where the book already knows that. So I found, doing creative things like that is one of the best ways to actually be sharp when it comes to betting parlays or SGPs.
I like that. Because this is one of the questions where I think it's funny because, and maybe that's how parlays are all over the place in terms of your expected value. But like I approach them actually completely different, especially in the NFL. I don't really look for correlations anymore because I do feel like half the time I can't even put them in a parlay together. The books have really smartened up. Second of all, to your point, you're starting to get lines that they're not even what they would be individually if you just parlay them. Like the book is actually, they're kind of treating them like a teaser or something where it's, they're setting a specific price. So what I try to do is I just look at game scripts at large. I almost treat it like, you and I have talked about in the past about DFS lineups and, kind of getting them to tell a story. Well, if there's a certain team, like let's say in basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder at home in the playoffs, just been ridiculous. So I'm just going to play a lot of different, kind of plays that correlate with my one specific outcome, but I'm not necessarily looking for like, it has to be like low 3-pointers and low assists, which, do correlate to each other. It's just whatever I think is undervalued. And that's the other key, I think, for me, I found is just, because it's parlays and especially with the rise of the same game parlay, everyone's trying to look for these correlations and these things. And I think the better time is spent if you're going to spend time researching, just find plus EV bets. And even if they're minus juice, because those are the ones a lot of people stay away from. But a lot of times they have the most value. So if you like, a lot of people who follow me in the Action app know, like when I go on a hot streak, I'll rattle off 4, 5, 6 bets. I won't like put them in a parlay in the app, but a lot of them will be those like negative juice bets that are just still plus EV. and that's how and if you wanted to parlay them, you'd get a pretty good return. So that's how I kind of look at it now, because I just think the market has gotten so sharp, and I don't want to keep like kind of switching up my process just for the market to like catch on anyway. So I just kind of continue to focus on the best value bets, and usually there's more than one or two on a slate, and kind of go from there.